sisters, and I was to play Swedish Siamese twins, but I couldn't do the accent. But I'd spent half my childhood in Quebec. So I said, Brian, how about if I'm French-Canadian Siamese twins? And I think I can proudly say I'm the only actress who anyone's ever heard of who has played French-Canadian Siamese twins. It's kind of a rarefied area of expertise. And so Brian was, in fact, for a guy who makes such macabre movies, one of the funniest, wittiest, warmest people in the world. Was wonderful with actors. He had a few quirks. We lived together. Whenever he was depressed, he would go, we lived in New York, and he would go to just horror movie after horror movie. So he'd go, if he got down and depressed, his therapy wasn't Prozac, it wasn't around then. His therapy was to go to as many horror movies as he could cram in a day. And for some reason it always made me feel better. I never quite figured that out about him. He was really brainy. I mean, he was building a computer on our dining room table before anybody did that sort of thing. He was just a wonderful, wonderful director and a wonderful guy. And I suppose one would think he's macabre and weird, but he wasn't. He was just very bright and very funny and snuggly. Big snuggle bunny. He'd be horrified if he heard me say that. Any other questions? Yes?
How did you get into the acting business?
That's an interesting question, because I grew up in little mining camps in the Canadian North, and some of them were so remote that bush pilots had to fly in and bring supplies in and stuff like that. And in one of these towns, in Sept-Îles, which is in northern Quebec, kids weren't allowed to see movies in Quebec because there'd been a really bad fire, and so they weren't allowed to go to the theater. So the priest showed them in church basements, and I saw two movies. I saw one with Glynis Johns about a family in a logging camp, and the kids all got separated because their parents died or something. And then I saw Old Yeller. I'll never forget walking home through the snow. It was about a mile, just sobbing, and the tears freezing on my face. But for some reason, it made me go, I'm going to be an actress. And so my mother had forbidden us to read comics, anything trashy. She was an English teacher. So we were English and history. So we only were allowed to read good books. But I discovered movie magazines around the same time. So the bush pilots knew that Ken Kidder's daughter liked these movie magazines. And so they'd smuggle them up from Montreal, and I would hide them between, the box spring in your mattress, slip them in there, and then late at night I'd be reading about Fabian and Troy Donahue, and I had really bad taste in movie stars. Carol Lindley and Tuesday. I mean, I was just absolutely, over the moon about this world in Hollywood, which of course isn't what it was really like at all. And that went on, and then when I was 11, me and my mom and the kids in the family went to New York for a summer, and I got taken to see Bye Bye Birdie with Dick Van Dyke and Michael J. Parler, and I watched these people on stage singing and dancing, and that was it. I was just going to be a movie star. So my diaries, the ones we had when we were kids that lock, you take a little lock, and you didn't get your diary, and you filled it all in. And they all have this stuff in them going, I'm going to go to Hollywood and be a movie star. And I wasn't interested in acting. I didn't know anything about acting. I was really young. But I just, after I saw that play, that was it. I was never going to do anything else. So we moved to Vancouver. At 14, I went down to CBC, which is Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, which is government funded, and I auditioned and I started working right away. By 18, I borrowed $400 and went to Hollywood, and in a week I got an ingenue lead in a movie, and I thought, well, of course, that's how you're supposed to do it. I was too dumb. At 18, you're really brave. Little thing. And so I was just really lucky. I just kept working. But I never wanted anything else. And then I started to learn to act about halfway through my career. But it's a good life for parents who are terrified that your kids are going to go into acting and ruin their lives. Don't be. You meet the most wonderful people. You create families wherever you go. You get to explore not only different characters, but the worlds they live in. So in doing your homework, you get these great educations. You learn about history, you travel, and even though financially it's not the most secure life in the world, especially, I mean, my generation didn't make anything like the money kids now make. I mean, they make fortunes after 3 movies, they're set for life. And we weren't like, it wasn't like that at all. But you do, my theory of life is nobody ever lay on their deathbed and went, I'm really glad I played it safe. They usually regret what they didn't do. And so if you're in the theater, which is full of orphans, basically, we call ourselves orphans, we'd probably be criminals if we weren't in the theater. You have this global family that kind of understands what you do, and it's a really great life. It's a really, really great life, even if you're just doing bit parts. It's a really great life, so don't worry about your children. And it's not nearly as seedy as everyone thinks. It's just that if you cover everything by the press, the same number of people get divorced, the same number of people get in trouble with drugs, the same number of people get messed up. It's just that if it's all over paper, it looks like it's way more.